Hey guys, Pat here. So, we've waited 14 years for The Incredibles 2 after the huge success of the original film from 2004. Now, that film was directed by Brad Bird. If you don't know Brad Bird, and by the way, who doesn't know Brad Bird, his career goes way back. He worked on Batteries Not Included, Family Dog, The Simpsons. He was a major part of The Simpsons. He made his animation debut directing a film with what I consider to be the greatest American animated film of all time. I don't think it's maybe the greatest animated film of all time. I still think that's up in the air with something by Miyazaki or Fantastic Planet by Rene Laloux. I think there's a lot of films that possibly even Fantasia, which I guess is an American film. But for me personally, I think for a traditional animated film with the story and characters and all that, I don't think that the Iron Giant's ever been surpassed. I like The Little Mermaid. I like a lot of films from the Renaissance. I like The Great Mouse Detective. I like Sleeping Beauty and all that. But for me, when it comes to characterization, tone, storytelling, animation direction, just in general, everything, I think the Iron Giant is the standard. Quite frankly, I think it's probably better. It's a better version of E.T. than Spielberg even made. Now, having said that, I like all of Brad Bird's work, excluding probably Tomorrowland. I think that The Incredibles is wonderful. I was a big fan of that movie. Still am. I mean, I still watch it every few years. I don't watch it as much as I used to. When it came out, I was 14, and I saw it in the theater like a lot of people. And it was instant classic. I mean, that's kind of how everyone felt at the time, that you saw an instant classic. And I loved Ratatouille. I think Ratatouille is one of the best Pixar films. I think I would put it in the top, five. His first two films, I don't know if they're quite 10. I mean, Iron Giant I basically give like a 10. I'd give Incredibles like a 9.5, and I'd give Ratatouille like a 9. And then he made Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, which many people consider the best Mission Impossible film. It's probably not my favorite, but it got the team aspect right, and his framing, composition, all of that. His action scenes in that movie, phenomenal. I mean, it showed that he had a great eye and wasn't just a masterful technician, craftsman in animation, that he could actually translate into live action films. And that film, its plots or whatever, but as a pure experience film, I mean, that film's terrific. There's action scenes and stretches of that film that I think are absolutely wonderful. Then he made Tomorrowland, and that didn't really work out. The script by Damon Lindelof, who just can't seem to write a good script for a Hollywood movie. He had George Clooney, he had all these elements. It just didn't work out for him. And so, I know it was Vin Diesel. Yeah, great. But having said all that, what people really wanted for years from Brad Bird was The Incredibles 2. The demand for this movie goes back to when the first one ended. I mean, we're going over a decade now. That I remember in the first film ends, the family is a team at the end. They all have the masks on, and they're going to fight the Underdweller. And everyone was so excited. And we had the Toy Story sequels, but Pixar didn't really make sequels. They didn't, outside of Toy Story. We had to wait a long time to get Finding Dory, Monsters University. Now, I will say this. I do not like Finding Dory at all, actually. I think Finding Dory's kind of bad, or just really mediocre, which sucks because I think Finding Nemo's a wonderful movie. But Finding Nemo works better as a standalone movie. It works better as its own thing. It just kind of came out and really blew up and caught us off guard. It was this wonderful little film. It didn't need a sequel. That's one thing that it really suffered from, is they just repeated the structure and the patterns from the original film. Whereas The Incredibles kind of demanded a sequel more so than any other film. In Monsters University, I like the final act where they go to the real world and it's kind of like a monster movie. That's fun. But this film, on the other hand, is really chose not to direct it because of South Park. That's what he said. So Brad Bird should have done Star Wars Episode 7, but apparently he chose not to do it due to Star Wars, because of South Park. I think Brad Bird was my choice. I was asked for years, who do you think should direct Episode 7? And I always said Brad Bird, after seeing Mission Impossible 4. I wouldn't have probably said that just going off of his animated film. But yeah, Finding Dory, I know critics liked it and it made $1 billion, but man, it sucks. I mean, I give it like a 5. It's so mediocre. It feels like a film for 3-year-olds. I mean, it's so mediocre. They spend all that time at the place where the animals are held captive. It's the same plot. Marlin and Nemo looking for Dory. This time it's the same story as Finding Nemo. It just doesn't have any of the magic of it. It's because the original Finding Nemo I love, I think is a wonderful film. I really do. Andrew Stanton's Finding Nemo is a wonderful film. The Incredibles, though, there's a lot of room here for sequels. Going back to when The Incredibles came out a little bit, let me talk about it a little bit before I really get into the sequel. Also, I know this is a spoiler review, but I'm going to say this. There's really not a lot to spoil about this movie. So I use that term, I use it lightly because there's a big plot twist in this movie, and if you don't see it coming within the first, like, I don't know, half hour, then you're just not paying attention. So I don't really think there's spoilers for this movie, but if you're that uptight about it, that's fine. So the warning, it's in there, the spoiler warning. One thing that was really great about the original was that it had a Watchmen like quality. In fact, it took some things from Watchmen. You remember the cape thing where the guy gets killed with this cape, he gets sucked into the airplane propeller. That was in Watchmen with a door, with a sliding door. A character gets shot to death in Watchmen. Also, the outlawing of superheroes was in Watchmen, that you weren't allowed to be a superhero anymore, or you had to work for the government, basically. So there were Watchmen elements, Alan Moore's Watchmen, in Brad Bird's original film. Also, it was the wonderful mix of 60s James Bond aesthetics with the Fantastic Four comic books of the era. This Art Deco style. This wonderful thing Brad Bird does, he does it also in The Iron Giant, where he kind of mixes the 50s and the early 60s together, the black and white televisions, the way cars looked, the way buildings looked. It's very nostalgic, but he has this great twist on it. He's great at character design. I love that his 3D films still have this 2D quality to him. His characters don't look so realistic. He still leans on animation. It's absolutely wonderful. Never thought about it like that. Kind of funny. Yeah, there's Watchmen elements in the which is what made The Incredibles stand out, because you have to go back to that time. All we had was the Spider-Man films, Tim Burton's Batman films, the X-Men films, Blade, Superman movies. And those are all movies I like. I like Superman the movie. I like Blade. I like X-Men 2. I like Spider-Man. But we didn't really get that perfect formula film that really showed this is how you do a superhero film. This is pre-Marvel, before Marvel really figured out the formula. And now we have the Avengers, now we have Infinity War, now we have tons of superhero films, and there's a certain tone. The Incredibles was the first one to capture it perfectly, in my opinion. And and I love Batman Begins, but that's a different kind of beast. The first Incredibles was the first superhero film you saw that I remember that it felt like somebody got it 100% right. That they weren't just trying to make a movie, but in a sense they were trying to be what it's like to read a comic book to life, comic book panels. And that film did it perfectly. It still holds up. It's a great movie. It's got a great story. It's got great characters. It's got great pacing, a great score by Michael Giacchino, great dialogue, and it's an amazing movie. I mean, I really can't say enough great things about it. If he hadn't made The Iron Giant, I would hold that film up to the highest standard, but I think he actually has never topped The Iron Giant. But I still think the first Incredibles is an amazing movie, and if you haven't seen it, where have you been? It's considered a modern classic, and for good reason. Now, here's the thing. They waited a long time to make a sequel. A long time. 14 years is a hell of a long time, and they said because of the writing, and Brad Bird was trying to figure it out. Now, after seeing the film, I will say that my biggest disappointment with it, more than anything, is that this film doesn't warrant a 14-year wait. This film really felt like this should have come out in, like, 2008. Probably 4 years after the original, or even 2009, 10, and this film would have played a lot better for me. I mean, it's a huge hit. The opening weekend apparently is going to be 180 million. I don't think Incredibles is a better Watchmen movie than Watchmen. It's way too upbeat for that, even given the huge number of superheroes killed. Well, I didn't say that it was a better Watchmen movie than Watchmen. I said it was like a perfect superhero movie. I don't think I said that it was a better version than Watchmen, although I think it's a much better film than Watchmen on any it doesn't have the flaws of Watchmen. Watchmen has great scenes, but it's so flawed and has so many mistakes by Snyder and certain people he cast and music cues that The Incredibles doesn't have. The Incredibles is tight. And you kind of lose something in translation with the comic book to the Watchmen movie, where The Incredibles is just its own thing. Or as a Fantastic Four movie, it's kind of perfect. So I really, that's one of my biggest issues with this, just out of the gate, is one, this isn't as good as the first movie, which I thought it had the potential to be, or even better. Kind of like Toy Story 2 in a lot of ways is better than Toy Story 1. Toy Story 2 is really great. I thought this would be better than the original because I had faith in Brad Bird. Brad Bird's amazing. I love the guy. And I thought, well, hell, he's coming back to animation. This is franchise. This is not as good as the first movie. By quite a bit, actually. That doesn't make it bad. That doesn't make it like... I will warn people who have seizures, including my best friend who has seizures, to be weary of this film. There's a sequence with Elastigirl, and where she fights the bad guy, a screenslaver, and all these lights come on, and I could definitely see this scene giving people seizures. I mean, it was freaking me out. I mean, I really got to warn people that there is a moment in this movie that feels like the Pokemon episode. It's insane. The lighting, I was like, oh my god, what were you thinking? I mean, it's cool, but it's pretty crazy. It had potential to be better than the first one. I disagree. I think Brad Bird could have made a better movie than the first one. I think that he could have written a better script. I think he had more of a foundation than he did than the original. And the problem is, if it was just even like half as good as the first one, I would still say it's great. But I wouldn't even say it's half as good as the original. Once again, that's not saying it's bad. I think this is a fine film. But it's so unfortunate that it lacks so much of the commentary that the original film had. It lacks so much of the cleverness that the original film had. It lacks so much of just the oomph, the freshness. And I know the freshness would go away, but Brad Bird had to find something new to make it fresh. You know, the original film, one of the big things that made it work was Syndrome. Syndrome was a commentary on fan culture. Years before we heard this toxic fan thing, that he was the fan of Mr. Incredible and then turned into the bad guy and made himself superpowers to fight. What arbitrary rating would you give it? Well, I'm going to wait till a little bit later. It's a little early. I want to kind of get into a little bit. But one of the great things was that commentary that he was doing in that original film. And it wasn't just that. He was talking about so much in that film. That film has a lot of depth to it and subtext. This film lacks subtext. I really couldn't figure out what the ultimate message of this film was, and I don't really think it has a clear message. It's a very good family film. It's a great film to go take your kids to see. It's a very well-paced film. It moves well. It's got great action scenes. The animation is phenomenal. His animation direction is just as good as it's ever been. It's the composition, the lighting, all of that is amazing. The score, the voice acting. On a technical level, this film is amazing. No question. And I think it really picks up in the third act, but it lacks depth where it needs to, and I think it made some crucial mistakes in the design of the film that held it back, that I don't really get why Brad Bird did them, and we're going to get into that a little bit. And I'm a little bit confused by certain decisions that were made in this film. The early reviews were coming out saying that this might be as good as the original and on par with it. Now, as it's gone on the last week, the reviews have kind of gone down. Still well reviewed. I mean, I'd agree with a lot of the critics. It's just like it's a good movie. But there's so much potential of what Incredibles 2 could have been, and this really suffers from sequelitis, where it just feels like it only exists to be a sequel and not as this great standalone story that it could have been, even though I had a good time with it. It just suffers because the villain's not as good. Screenslaver's not nearly as good as Syndrome. The backstory's not as good. The design of the film, the narrative design, I think, isn't as good. And mainly that plot twist being so obvious, I think, really hurts the film because that's kind of supposed to be its big moment, and you see it coming, and I think everyone's going to see it coming. And it ends with the same ending as the first film, which bothered me. We basically end up at the same place we were at the end of the original film. It felt like there was a lack of progress beyond one big thing that changes at the end. And I was like, part of the joy of this, waiting for this, was seeing the progress, and there was none. We're basically back to the end of the first Incredibles, which I don't like. I still haven't watched Speed Racers. It's so bad movie, it's good. I actually would say Speed Racer is just good. It's too long. The Wachowski should have cut 20 minutes easily. if not 30 minutes. But the bulk of the film, the acting's really solid. Emile Hirsch, John Goodman, Susan Sarandon, the family dynamic, fun dialogue, the visual design. It's just too much. It's too indulgent if they cut it down a bit. I really like Speed Racer. I liked it in the theater. I know Max Landis was a fan of it, and it's got a cult following. I don't get the hate for Speed Racer. Michael Phillips' review, I think, sums it up really well. He gave it 3 stars. I think Speed Racer is was their best film since The Matrix. Was their only really good film outside of post The Matrix. Bound's very good, their first film. Yeah, I like Speed Racer. I think it's got a really good script. I think it's a lot like all the stuff Scott Pilgrim got praised for. They were already did in Speed Racer, and everyone hated it. But I'll defend. I've often wanted to do an underrated classics on Speed Racer. I have a lot of positives to say about Speed Racer. I don't think it's bad at all. I think it's really good. I really don't get the hate for it. I wish we saw Frozone's wife in the film. That would have been cool. How would Force Awakens have looked like a movie and technical side of things if Brad Bird had directed and written? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming more like Mission Impossible 4, or more like... I don't really know. I don't know if it would have looked too far off from Abrams' style besides the camera work, but I think he would have approached a lot of the aesthetics in a similar way. They have a problem with plot twists. They keep doing it. It's getting predictable. Yeah, the plot twist thing doesn't work unless you have a really good plot twist set up at the beginning. You really can't... you can't just put one in there to give your narrative some kind of push. Like, oh my god, there's a plot. They did that in Coco, and I think it totally fell flat in Coco. And that's the same issue here. So, Incredibles 2 starts immediately after the first film. I mean, I'm not kidding. The ending of the first film is where this movie begins. They're interviewing that kid, I think Tony, the one that Violet was going to go on the date with. And he's being talked to by the government, and they're cutting back to when they're fighting the Underdweller. Now, this isn't a bad opening. It's pretty cool the way it's cut, that it's cutting back and forth, and it's from someone else's point of view. My issue with it, and this is one of the biggest problems with the film for me from a conceptual place, is this film taking place immediately after the first film. Brad Bird not doing a time jump. I think that is a fatal flaw to this film's quality. I really, really think this film should have jumped ahead a few years in the timeline. I really do. I don't see any benefit to having it take place immediately. Once again, if this film had come out in 08 or 09, sure. 14 years later, and taking us right back to 14 years ago, and having this lack of progression, the kids not being older. I mean, Dash should be older. I felt that way. I feel like, I mean, all that. It felt weird. It felt weird that there was this continuity to the first film. Now, that's going to be cool watching the movies back to back. You'll be able to just see it just flow right into the next film, but I don't think that was the right storytelling decision. I think the best decision would have been to do a time jump and given us something, reestablish things in a new way. Instead, we're pretty much just exactly where we left off. And it makes it a little tough to feel like there's world building happening again. It feels like we're just kind of going off the world building. And in a way, it's lazy. In a way, it's kind of lazy. Even though the opening action scene's awesome, it really is. It's exciting. The opening's really fun. And the early part with them staying at a motel is great. I don't know. I knew it wasn't going to be as good as the first one from the moment I saw the first trailer for 2. The focus on Elastigirl rather than the whole family was disappointing. Same here, I agree. I think that was a huge mistake. I agree with you. I think making Elastigirl the main character and not focusing on the family dynamic was a huge mistake. I agree with you. But this film could have been better had they made the family dynamic. That's kind of was the promise at the end of the first Incredibles, was that we were going to get the family film. I mean, that was literally the frickin' promise, is at the end when they show them all in the mask, and go, oh my god, there's going to be the whole family fighting now. That's what made it so exciting. And that's not this movie. It's not about the family fighting together. I don't know what the hell Brad Bird was thinking. I mean, it's really like, why did you end the first film that way? What was so exciting is that the idea was this film was going to start and the family was going to be a team, and we were going to get the team family Fantastic Four thing throughout a whole movie. Instead, God, Bob Odenkirk comes in with his sister. They own a company, and they want to get the superhero outlaw changed. They want to get the ban changed, and they shut down the government program from the first one. So they want to change that, so they said, we have to change public image. So you guys have been doing collateral damage, which Civil War kind of already covered, and they also dropped the collateral damage thing. pretty much halfway into the movie, so that's not even subtext that's fleshed out. So they decide that Elastigirl's best for public image because she destroys, less buildings or fewer buildings, what have you. And by the way, you're asking, is this movie feminist SJW? No, this is not an SJW feminist film. It has moments of dialogue, but Brad Bird does something with the villain that keeps it from being that way. So I don't think it's some preachy political feminist film, personally, just because Elastigirl's the main character. I guess I'm just gonna say it. It's gonna sound sexist to some people. I don't think Elastigirl's as interesting of a character as Mr. Incredible. Part of what makes Mr. Incredible such a compelling protagonist is his insecurity, is his midlife crisis, is the fact that he wants to be a superhero so bad. Even in this film, early on when she wants to go on, he can't admit that she could do this, that he wants to do it. It's about him. He's selfish. And that's what's so kind of great about the first movies. He goes and does these superhero acts on this island, and he's really being selfish, and he's lying to his family. And then his family ultimately has to come to save him. And he has to deal with the fact that he made this mistake. There's a sequence in that film where he thinks his family is dead, and it's heartbreaking. And then later on he says this great scene, he's, I can't have that feeling of losing you guys again. There's these magical moments that Brad Bird captures in that film. And it's in the first one. Do you remember the moment that's so amazing in Iron Giant? You can fly, and then the giant flies. There's that moment in The Incredibles where Dash runs on water. And it's one of the best moments of the 2000s when Dash runs on water and laughs. And it's just like, he can run on water? It's these amazing movie magic moments that Brad Bird does. There's never a moment like that. Maybe one with Jack Jack. Jack Jack's actually one of the best parts of this movie. So I just don't think Elastigirl, because she's like just too perfect. She does know what to do. She's right all the time. She's smarter than him. She just, I don't know. Like, I like Elastigirl. I think she's very attractive for an animated character, which I know sounds weird. Double Toasted had a whole thing on this, but yeah, she's got booty. I think she's hot. The stuff they do with her in that motorcycle is awesome. That there's a whole action scene. I think she's great. I just don't think has as much depth. I don't think she's as interesting of a character as Mr. Incredible. He has more to him. He has more dimension because of his flaws. He's more flawed than her. So him being the protagonist is just ultimately more interesting. And I hate saying that. But it kind of makes the film more bland than the first one because he felt so real. And even in this film, his flaws he makes and his qualities as a person, I think, are more interesting than hers. I don't really think she has that much depth to her as a character, which made her work as the mother character that comes in to save the day, and he kind of needs her. But that's less interesting. I hate to say it, but those feelings are never going to be replicated in modern movies. They just don't have the same magic anymore for whatever reason. We do get less movie magic moments. I still feel them sometimes. I think it's rare, but I've had them in moments. I think at the end of Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which is, that movie's about 6 years old, when Caesar says Caesar is home, that one hit me pretty hard. Andy Serkis, and when he says that, I think there's still moments like District 9. I had moments like that. Does Elastigirl have any flaws? I can't think of any. She's one, I mean, I'm not going to call her Mary Sue, but she's too perfect in a sense to be kind of a lead character. It's not bad for a supporting character, but it does, I think, ultimately make this film so much weaker because of that they make Elastigirl the focus. I really think that Mr. Incredible is just a more interesting character to me all around. I think he has way more going on. Him sitting with Frozone and listening to the police scanner, waiting for crimes to happen. That's amazing. There's nothing in this film like that, and I think Brad Bird lost something. I think he went for big, bombastic, more action. They did cuck Mr. Incredible a little bit, but I didn't dislike the Mr. Incredible stuff. What I felt like, though, is that the film has kind of split between itself. I don't like the narrative that we're watching Elastigirl do these action scenes looking for the screenslaver and Mr. Incredible being the father at home with his kids. There are nice moments like that, like Dash needs math homework done and Mr. Incredible doesn't know the modern way to do the math to figure it out. So then there's this great scene where he gets up at night and he goes to read the book and he does teach Dash. That's good writing, right? Because it doesn't just follow the cliche pattern. Mr. Incredible actually is putting effort in and trying to be a father. He's not just accepting, oh, I'm too stupid. That's good writing. All the stuff with Jack's powers are amazing. They do. I think Jack might be the highlight of the movie, to be honest with you. Everything with Jack worked. Him fighting the raccoon was great. His powers in the third act of the movie. In fact, the whole third act I thought was great. I thought the third act of the movie really made the movie work, because it was kind of losing me in the second act. And then I'd say the last, like, 25 minutes, 30 minutes is awesome. I think the ending has great action. I think seeing all the superheroes fight, I think the way it all comes together, all that's, it captures that feeling you want from the original film. I think the ending of this film really works. I also like the beginning of the film. So what I didn't like, you still miss your corgi. Well, yeah, corgis are the best breed of dog, man. You know. Why would they change math? Math is math. Those are good scenes. I think Mr. Incredible, one thing I gotta give Brad Bird credit for, he knows how to write dialogue. And this film has very fast-paced, good dialogue. I cannot take that away from it. The dialogue is solid. People talk like real people. They're not being cartoony. The voice acting's great. These are great actors. Craig T. Nelson, Holly Hunter, Sam Jackson. The dialogue was good. I mean, it was good. It was sharp. It was witty. They're having conversations about hypocrisy and moral values and cynicism and all that stuff. I thought that was very good. I think all of the dialogue, I mean, Brad Bird can write. You know, I mainly had issues with the story. I thought the dialogue and all that stuff was great, and I thought his shot composition and there's a scene early on where Mr. Incredible, Bob, and Elastigirl are sitting by a pool, and there's this beautiful lighting on them, and they're talking about what they're going to do with their lives, and he's like, man, I don't want to go back to work again and have this dead-end job that I don't like doing and all that, and they're talking about their lives. That's the stuff Brad Bird does that's so great and so human that a lot of American animated films don't do. He doesn't mind making something intimate and not a big set piece or silly. It's something that The Simpsons used to do, which he worked on, this wonderful intimacy. Remember the ending of that episode of The Simpsons where Lisa's a substitute? It gives her that piece of paper and it says, "You are Lisa Simpson." That was a James Brooks idea. There's those human moments that are so wonderful. He does that in The Iron Giant perfectly. And it's in this movie. There's those moments where you feel like you're just watching people living their lives trying to figure out what to do. And that's what Brad Bird's so good at. And there, and I was very optimistic early on because I was like, man, this is a great what's happening here. But then the problem is I don't feel like the two things happening at the same time really came together that great. As her with the family in the first film and the kids and their relationship and them discovering their powers and what to do with them, and then Mr. Incredible on the island. I don't think it's as good here. Remember when he went to go meet Edna in the first film, how exciting that scene was? There's just not a lot of moments like that, unfortunately. So instead you just get some good action scenes. The motorcycle chase scene's great. You really good action, and you get some funny moments. Like I said, Jack's really funny. There's a moment at the end where I think is kind of a great movie moment where he just turns into like a giant blob baby, and you don't see, and it's kind of awesome. It kind of reminded me of the big baby in Spirited Away. Really had fun with that. So they start bringing in other superheroes. And unfortunately, these other heroes just aren't that great design-wise and all that. You can see, like, they have cool powers. This one girl has portals, which is fun. And, or that episode with Do It For Her that always got to me. Yeah, there's great moments. Beauty and the Beast had some of that too, Elegant. There's a great moment at the end where Beast says, "No, Belle, this is right, you came back." And all that. There's moments like that, or he actually says it. He says that in that movie too. He says, "I want to do something for her." Little subtlety. It's good stuff. And Brad Bird can do that. He's a wonderful storyteller. So I just didn't like this story that much. That Elastigirl goes to work for this company that's run by this guy and his sister. They're both upset because their father was murdered because he went to go call a superhero and they didn't answer the phone because it got outlawed, so he got shot by criminals. It was actually pretty serious that they got shot. I was like, oh my god, but it just wasn't enough. There wasn't enough dramatic weight and there wasn't enough wit to balance those things out, unfortunately, from keeping this from being just a very good family film, nothing that became a great movie necessarily on its own. Unfortunately, I mean, I really say that. I was really hoping this film was going to be great. I didn't even need it to be as good as the first film. I just wanted it to be a great movie on its own. I just don't think it is. Once again, doesn't mean it's bad. I'm not saying this is a bad movie. This is a good movie. You know, you should watch it. I think it's gonna. I think it's a. I don't think it's bad. Like, people never listen to that stuff when you talk about stuff. They think you're just saying a movie's like, oh, you're a hater. I think no. But basically, I didn't like that narrative split. I thought it wasn't good. I thought him being at home with the kids and her going out wasn't good. So then there's this villain shows up, the Screenslaver, and it's so obvious that it's the girl that works at the company that makes the tech, because she makes all the technology. So you assume it's her. How she's acting throughout the film, that she's becoming Elastigirl's friend. Now, this is one thing that I'd say would keep it from being like SJW, is that the bad character is a female. And so Brad Bird doesn't try to lean on it. He makes the villain character a female, so he balances it out a little bit. So there's a big plot twist moment. You think Elastigirl captures Screenslaver, but it was just a pizza guy that was brainwashed with the glasses. And after this moment happens, you find out who the real bad guy. Now, at this point in the movie, I wasn't tuning out, but it was kind of losing me, even though I was still enjoying it in the middle. And it's a 2-hour movie. This isn't like a 90-minute film. In fact, I think it probably could have been a little bit tighter, if I'm being honest here. But when the bad guy gets revealed, there's this awesome moment where, although it's kind of from the Fantastic Four movie, which is funny, that terrible movie, the Tim Story film, where she's like freezing Elastigirl and she says like, I'm going to snap your body and all that. Once that stuff starts, this movie picks up again. When she takes Elastigirl and brainwashes her, and then... not brainwash, mind controlling her. And then they have all these superheroes they bring in, like a guy who can crush things and this big rock. Actually, all these guys that really suck. I mean, they really do. This one guy's like reflux, and he just pukes out lava. I mean, they're really not as fleshed out as the main characters. I think they could have done a little bit more than that. That kind of made it feel a little DreamWorks-esque and not the quality of what you want from this. Although I've thought the best Disney animated film the last few years was Moana. I actually don't think it's any of these films from Pixar. I actually think Moana was the best. And that's funny because that's the main studio, but I would say Moana's the best, better than Zootopia or any of them. Wreck-It Ralph, I would say Moana far and above, because that's the guys who did Little Mermaid and I think Aladdin and all that, and I think that movie is really good. I've seen that movie a lot, and it's kind of great. It's a great Disney princess movie. The songs are good. So once this moment happens, once the mind control thing kicks in, you might have to wait for next Saturday, but you have the next Saturday Night Fever, be on Zack Schneider's Watchmen. I've thought about it. Yeah, I might have to wait because I don't know if I have time to do Saturday Night Fever. I was trying to see this movie yesterday so I could do Saturday Night Fever and then do Box Office Addict, because this is going to have a huge opening weekend, but I just didn't get to see it yesterday. I saw it today, so I might not be able to do a Saturday Night Fever this Saturday, which sucks, but I don't know if I can do this live stream and then immediately go over to Saturday Night Fever. I'm not saying I won't, but I don't think I can, because I don't think I can just sit here and watch a movie right after I got done with this. And it's funny because I just rewatched The Matrix this week. I got really drunk. I was Twitter ranting drunk and watching The Matrix. Like, yeah, I could do a Saturday Night Fever on The Matrix. Sounds like this could have pretty easily been redone to focus on the family more than a bunch of random superheroes. Yeah, no, I agree. The film was dark at times. You got cut off for a sec. I heard from a Discord friend that Moana was terrible. Any thoughts on that? Well, it's not. Your friend's absolutely wrong. Moana's great. Moana's got some of the best songs in a Disney movie in years. The animation's breathtaking. It's really funny. It feels like a 90s Disney movie if you like stuff like Mulan, if you like Aladdin, if you like The Little Mermaid. It's up that alley, so it's really good. I don't know anyone could say Moana's terrible. It's actually kind of, I'd say it's great, honestly. I would say Moana's a great movie. So maybe I'll talk about it sometime. Pat, have you seen The Shadow with Alec Baldwin? Yes, I have. I do think it's held up for sure. I've seen it a few times. I grew up on that movie, actually, The Shadow. I watched it a lot when I was a kid. I think it's better than Tim Burton's Batman. I have no problem saying that. That film hasn't held up at all. So just joined. Did you like it? Yes and no, but I've said a lot, so it's kind of hard to be concise about the things I've said. So once the third act kicks in, the movie picks up. Once they start mind controlling all the other superheroes, and the family has to fight because they set up the Incredibile. And once Frozone shows up to try to save the kids at the house, and and they're starting to get attacked. At that point on, I really like the movie. I like all that stuff. I like Frozone fighting to protect the kids. I like them escaping in the car. I like the stuff on the boat a lot. I like the family teaming up together. I like the portal chick and how they fight them. I like Violet. I think Dash stops being annoying. Dash is really annoying in this movie. No, it's not too SJW. Dash is really annoying for most of this movie, and I really like Dash in the first one. But he gets awesome in the third act. All of it. Them going in the car, getting on the boat, saving their parents, the parents fighting each other, everybody getting mind controlled. There's actual tension. They're going to make superheroes legal again. There's a lot of things going on. I mean, I really basically I liked all of it. I think that all that works. They're gonna wreck this ship. The bad chicks, they're taking the glasses off people. Jack turns into like a giant baby and goes through walls. There's so much going on. They're on the ship, and the kids are trying to get to Jack, and he's OP. He can transform and all this stuff, and he has a new costume made by Edna. So the kids are trying to save their parents, while also trying to stop Jack. The Incredibles are under mind control, and Frozone and all these other heroes. Bob Odenkirk's character doesn't know that his sister's evil and was the screenslaver. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in like the last 25 minutes, which makes it really entertaining and exciting. And you get a big climax, and seeing the family work together again, and all that's kind of what you wanted. And seeing them fight these other superheroes, and Mr. Incredible going under the water, and them having to redirect the ship and all that. I liked all that. I thought that was all so good, and was what I wanted from this movie. I wish the whole movie had been that way. Excluding that, I would say the early stuff at the motel, the chase sequence with Elastigirl and the motorcycle, and some Jack scenes, I'd say are the best parts of the movie. Everything else is just okay at best. And good dialogue. It is good dialogue. So it's well written. So the movie ends, and superheroes are legal now, which is cool. That's the only real thing that's had like progression. Yeah, that's true. Disney movies are all contrived. That is very true. I can't think of one Disney animated film that isn't contrived as hell. I mean, yeah, that's something they all really suffer from. I really like the first one, but I think I might skip this one, or at least wait till TV. I think you could wait till TV or home video. I wouldn't say that would hurt at all. You don't really need to go see this in the theater. It doesn't mean don't watch it. I think this is a good movie. Just wait till you get, it probably would play better at home anyway. I mean, it's not a huge theater. Can you please review Valerian? Yeah, at some point. Maybe I'll do a Saturday Night Fever on that movie. That'd be a fun one to do. Luc Besson, the great Luc Besson. Although he was great at one time. La Femme Nikita and The Professional. Those are great films. So at the end, superheroes are now legal, which is a great thing. I think that's the only thing in the film I really did like that was like, oh, cool, that's something new, that they can all be superheroes again. That sets up Incredibles 3. And basically, the movie ends exactly where the first one ended. The family's going to do something, somebody attacks, and then they all they put their masks on, and it's the end, and it's incredible. So we pretty much end exactly where we started, except that it's legal now. So we don't make that much progression from the first film. Unfortunately, from a storytelling standpoint, and even the characters, I don't think make much progress. Elastigirl doesn't have much of a character arc or development. Mr. Incredible's pretty much at the same, except maybe he's more humbled about willing to work with others, but that was kind of what he'd learned in the first movie. The kids learn to be less bratty, I guess. They're kind of just assholes, and yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, nobody really has an amazing character thing happen to them in the movie. And also, yeah, once again, I couldn't find subtext. I really try to look for the meaning in things. Maybe the third we could finally get the family team up. That's what I want. I want the film where they're actually a family fighting from the very opening scene throughout the whole film. I want Dash to have a better character because I love Dash. I think you could do a lot with that. I want Jack. Maybe they have to do something with Jack because he becomes scary. They did play this movie safe. That is an unfortunate thing. Brad Bird didn't take a risk in anything. He didn't take a risk with any of the story decisions with the characters. He didn't even kill anyone. I think he really could have done something. Instead, he just made a very serviceable, good movie. He made a film that feels kind of below him for how good of a storyteller he is. If this was a DreamWorks movie, and excluding the How to Train Your Dragon films and all that, I'd be like, man, this is really good. But for what, an incredible sequel, you just expect a little bit more than, a safe, entertaining family film, I mean, and also, it's just, we have so many superhero films now that you really have to do something new. This isn't 2004 again. So instead of trying something new that hasn't really been done in the superhero genre, he does stuff that we've seen done before. And that was a big thing that really held this back. But mainly, I just wanted to see the family together. I wanted to see the family go to steam. I think this could have been a better movie if, here's my rewrite that I like to do sometimes. When he mentioned Jack turning into a giant blob, I thought of Akira. It's more like the baby in Spirited Away. He turns into like a giant baby of like fat rolls and stuff like that. But that's honestly one of my favorite moments in the movie visually and all that. It's awesome. All the stuff with Jack's really cool. And him in the third act is awesome. And a lot of stuff they set up in the other two acts pays off in the third act with Jack, which really makes it work. But if I was going to rewrite this film and Brad Bird wanted to keep all the same stuff, I would have had it that when the guy recruited them into the superhero thing, the Bob Odenkirk character, I wouldn't have him do the thing where he says, let's recruit Elastigirl, and you guys all have to sit on the back burner. I would have had him come in and say, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to market you guys and resell this as the family dynamic. We need your kids in this. So the idea is you guys are the Incredibles. You guys are a family, and that's how we're going to market you, because it's all about how they market the superheroes. Instead of making Elastigirl saying, hey, we need all of you. So then the whole film is the family. And then maybe Frozone's part in the movie is to watch Jack. So you keep the Frozone Jack scenes while Mr. Incredible, Elastigirl, Dash, and Violet are the team at the family. And they're going out and they have to fight the Screenslaver, and they're doing all these scenes together. And they all have to deal with the press. And some of them get more popular than others. Maybe Elastigirl's starting to get a little bit more spotlight than Mr. Incredible, so he starts to get upset. Violet doesn't like the spotlight because she's a teenage girl and she wants to be left alone. Dash loves the spotlight and is obsessed with it and is buying a bunch of stuff and enjoying it and having fun and all that. Maybe he buys his dad's old car with the money they're making and all that, right? It'd kind of be like that part in Basketball where Doug Reamer sells out. So it would be about that. It'd be about them essentially selling out in a sense. And then having to realize why they necessarily shouldn't do that. And I'll definitely do a spoiler review for that. But to me, that would have been a better film, because then we would have got the family together. We wouldn't have got this cliche father stays at home, Mr. Mom story. And we could have got more of a dynamic with the family. We could have got all those action scenes with the family, all those moments with them playing off of each other. And we could have got Mr. Incredible, because he's barely in this movie in a superhero form. And then we could have had them all had different things going on, dealing with the fame that they're getting and trying to rebrand themselves. And you could still have the plot twist with the bad character and all that. But then you have it where, she uses the parents and then the kids have to do the thing. You could keep a lot of that same stuff. And then they bring in the other superheroes and, you kind of have a Watchmen-like element again with the superheroes discussing what they do and how they present themselves and what right do they have to do this or that in the public and what's the... and they all have different ways that they want to go about it. Maybe some of the superheroes want to go a little further than the Incredibles do, so they fight about that, and that kind of makes a split between the characters. Maybe you don't even have the mind control plot line. Maybe you just get that the company is able to convince some of the other superheroes to turn bad because they think that you should actually be violent. Kind of a Magneto thing. Like, maybe we should kill these people. We don't have to save people. Maybe we should have more damage, and you kind of split the things up thing. That sounds like a better plot, and where I felt like the first film was pointing to 14 years ago. It's baffling to me Bird didn't take that route. That's the route I would have taken, and I'm not Brad Bird, but just watching the film, thinking about it, that just seems like a better way to go about it, is the Incredibles dealing with the media and fame as a family and how that affects their family life. They don't get to spend any time together. They try to have family dinners, but they're all busy. Dash is going off to be on television. Violet just wants to be left alone. Elastigirl's Mr. Incredible feels insecure about his wife. They don't have time to cook and be together anymore like that, but they're all doing... They're only really together when they're superheroes, but every time they're at home, they're not together. And they have to find a balance again of how to be together and balance their home life with their superhero lives. And the company, though, is... And everyone's like, we love the Incredibles. And that's making things positive. Instead of it just being Elastigirl, it's the entire group. They go, we love the Incredibles. We're going to pass this to where they can be legal again. We love all four of them. And people love the characters and everything like that. But then let's say they start fighting. And then there's a big serious moment in the movie where something bad's going to happen. And because they're all fighting, the bad guy wins. Or something bad happens because they can't agree with each other. Because they're all caught up in their own thing, and then that's when they all kind of have to wake up and be like, okay, wait, we need to figure out the problem here. We've let this go too far. And that would have been, and then you find out the bad guy was manipulating that kind of from the beginning. But that to me would have been a better plot. But once again, if you don't agree with that, that's fine. But I think that's more of what a lot of us wanted, was the family together and how they play off of each other. And them having to learn how to be a team, not just they have to come together as a team like the end of the first one, but learning how do we make this team thing work with our different personalities and with fame now involved, because the kids have never had to deal with that, while the parents are having to deal with the fact that now Elastigirl's the main star and Mr. Incredible's taking the back seat, and he was used to it being the other way when they were younger. And that bothers me. I mean, God, there was great stuff in the first film, like the flashback when he first meets Elastigirl, and just the elegance of it. There's nothing like that in this, unfortunately. But if you're going to make a big action sequel, that's the way I would have went. So that's my pitch to rewrite it. Instead, because too much focused on Elastigirl just makes it have less personality. Because once Frozone comes back into the movie, once Mr. Incredible's back in the movie, once the kids become the hero character, everything picks up. It's just obvious. Once all those characters start being what you want them to be, the movie gets so much better. It's not at its best when it's just the Elastigirl movie. I mean, you could just call this Elastigirl. And there was one review on Rotten Tomatoes that was fucking hilarious. I put this up on Twitter. Yeah, kind of like the first Avengers. I think that the Avengers with the Incredibles. How do they learn to work together when they're all fighting and they don't know? But more to deal with paparazzi and fame. The Avengers really didn't deal with that. This movie would deal more with superhero celebrity than the Avengers did, and how you deal with that in an era where we all worship superheroes and they're so big. And there's a fear of oversaturation. That kind of could have been the commentary in the movie, is how do you deal with that? How do you deal with these characters becoming so popular and everybody knowing them and it not just being a niche thing anymore? I'm in a bar right now, couldn't care less, but I just wanted to say hi and hello to everyone in the chat. Have a great weekend. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you. Don Draper at the bar, that's a shocker, huh? I think just too much focus on her took away some of the character. Some of the stuff that made the first movie so good was that it covered so many different things, and this film is so much her film. And I like Elastigirl, I like Holly Hunter. I just think I think that hurt the film ultimately. And the bad guy not being that great, generic bad guy like a Marvel villain for most of it until you find out the plot twist, that hurt the movie. Syndrome was a great bad guy once again because of the backstory, and Jason Lee's vocal performance was hilarious. There's just a lot. The voice and all that stuff isn't good. The only other super I liked in the new ones was the Portal Girl. I thought her powers were cool, but we've kind of seen that stuff before. We've seen Portal stuff in Portal the game, and Thor 2 even had that. So even the Portal thing's not like something fresh. There's just a lack of things that feel fresh and new in this movie. Brad Bird didn't feel like he was being that creative. He kind of just hit a bunch of cliches, which is unfortunate because he's kind of like great at being creative and doing new things. I don't know, after 14 years of thinking up ideas, this is the best he could come up with. And it's just, it's hard to talk about because it's hard to crap on a good movie, like a well-made movie, but it's just, it's a bunch of lost potential. It's not a sequel that totally builds off the first film as well as it could have. And in the modern super films, this isn't as good as Infinity War. This this isn't as good as some other superhero films that come in the last few years. This isn't, like Days of Future Past, I would say is better. And that's unfortunate. This should have been like one of the best ones that come out in the last years, and it's just not. Yeah, you guys keep saying it was never going to be good as the first, but that's kind of like a lazy thing to say. It didn't have to be as good as the first. It's still not a great movie, though, despite that. Like, it didn't have to be as good as the first. That wasn't the standard we were holding it to. But you assume Brad Bird making Incredibles 2 is going to be a great movie. I mean, it should be, right? Like it should still be great. It doesn't have to be as a great movie, but it still be great. It shouldn't just be okay. I mean, I hold Brad Bird to a higher standard than that. I mean, I had more fun with Mission Impossible 4 than this movie, and that was the fourth film in the franchise. I mean, so I assume Incredibles 2 would at least be like on par with that movie from like an entertainment perspective and like from the action scenes and stuff, and it wasn't. So, it's just you can accept a sequel that's not as good, but you still want a really good sequel, maybe like the Lethal Weapon 2 to Lethal Weapon 1. Instead you get I don't know what I would compare this to quality-wise. I don't want to say Temple of Doom because that's scary ground to go down. A lot of people are split on the movie. I don't know. I don't know what sequel I would compare this to quality-wise. It's really tough for me. Back to the Future 2, maybe? Although that's kind of a great sequel. Chamber of Secrets. I don't know. It's tough. The other reviews all said it was too SJW, but still quite good. I don't really see the SJW stuff. I'm confused by that. I didn't really see... Just because Elastigirl's the main character, and it's about her taking over and all that, and they talk about her being in the backseat of Mr. Incredible, and that, I mean, I don't think that makes it SJW. Personally. I mean, that's just the story beat that Brad Bird went for. I don't know if that makes... Because the movie never really says anything political. They have a couple lines of dialogue about women being behind the men, but then they make the bad guy the woman. The bad character, the evil villain's the woman. And honestly, it takes Mr. Incredible and the kids to save the day at the end. Elastigirl can't do it by herself. She does end up beating the main bad character, but it's another woman. So Brad Bird's not saying men are evil and women are good. He's saying that there's evil women too that are lying about how they want to use this position and all that. So it is getting to that point, Bathory. It's like every time that the female character's a lead, now it's SJW or feminist, it's feminazi. That is becoming... Stay-at-home dad's just a movie cliche, though, Craig. That's like Mr. Mom. Is Mr. Mom an SJW movie with Michael Keaton? Or Disney Channel movies? That's just a movie trope that's been around for years. The dad who stays at home and has trouble raising the kids while the mom gets a job or she gets some opportunity or goes off on a vacation and he can't raise the kid. That existed before, like, the whole social justice thing. I mean, I don't know if a stay-at-home dad equals SJW. I think it was just a cliche movie idea. And he was saying, well, let's use that old movie trope, but with the superheroes. Because that would make it a little different. What if a dad had to stay at home and raise his superhero kids? The movie's not political. I mean, that's the main thing that keeps it from being that way. It doesn't really have... because there's dialogue in Last Jedi that is political about animal rights. And, I mean, about animals and about capitalism and about war profiteering and about women's... there's dialogue like that in those movies. There's not really... dialogue in this movie that much that says political stuff or makes a statement. Honestly, I could have used some more stuff like that. I think it would have added to the movie if they would have said something. It doesn't really say anything except moral values are a good thing, I guess, and you just shouldn't be cynical. I don't really think this movie makes much of a statement. I think some people out there in particular, like, let's say No Bullshit or Dishonored Wolf types or certain critics or viewers like that on YouTube are just at a point where they're calling everything SJW if it has a hint of things that are SJW and other things. Maybe I'm misrepresenting people like that, but I feel like they would say that kind of stuff off the top of my head. People probably think that because of how much positive press a strong female protagonist gets. I mean, it's true. You will get just overpraised for that. There's a lot of critics Oh, I have to go back to reaffirm this point. There is a truth to this, that how some critics talk about films with the lead character. There was one review blurb I put up on Twitter that was hilarious, where this female writer, I think for New York Post, said, "I want an Incredibles 3 where Violet and Elastigirl fight against a bad guy named the Patriarchy." And I was just laughing. So especially I was thinking about my old character, the Patriot, if he was the bad guy in Incredibles 3 and they were fighting me. With the black. Actually, that'd be a great villain. That design he had where it looked like Venom, that'd be a great villain. I would do the voice. They could hire me tomorrow. I'll be the Patriarchy in Incredibles 3. That would be the ultimate end of my story. That I have to be the Patriarchy again in the Incredibles 3. And I get beat up by Elastigirl and Violet. And I'm like, no equal rights for you, Elastigirl. That would be the ultimate film, I think. Brad Bird, you can contact me. I will come sell my soul for money. So just let me know when you're ready to make that movie. I actually expect all blockbusters to be slightly SJW. I still think they can be good if they are. It's just sometimes they can get in the way. I mean, progressive stuff was always in Hollywood movies. It wasn't really it was just they were more subtle about it. They were better at presenting it. They were better writers. There was a nuance. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be great. He's on the TV. All hail the Patriarchy. Try to fight me, Elastigirl. I'm going to take over the world with men, my supermen. We don't need women. Go back to the kitchen. That would be so funny. That'd be a great movie. I mean, really, yeah. That'd be like Syndrome. The Patriarchy, that's his name. Oh my god. I should get paid more. I don't even care if the wage gap is a myth. They should pay me more, Elastigirl. Why pay you money, you bitch? You're just a second-rate man, anyone with twice the ass. It may be just because I watched it dubbed, but what dialogue was in The Last Jedi that was about women's rights? Some of the stuff with Holdor, or Hold the Door, as I say, Holdo, or something. There was clearly some stuff about, women in positions in power. Maybe it wasn't specific dialogue. I remember there being certain lines. I could be wrong. Don't get me wrong. I could be wrong specifically. I do remember that there being moments where, like, it felt very clear that it was like, you don't like a woman in power, do you, Poe? Or you don't like that I'm telling you what to do, kind of stuff. But maybe it was more tone. I might be wrong that there wasn't specific dialogue. There was dialogue about animal rights and dialogue about capitalism. I might be wrong that there was dialogue, but there was clearly subtext about it, about women's rights. Now, the Patriarchy should be that thing Shoe Head does. We don't need anything that Shoe Head does. And by the way, Shoe Head, she does this giant blob creature known as armored fat ass. That's what she does. Or make really terrible content that people somehow think is good because they have low comedy standards and they don't care about quality whatsoever or arguments with substance. But that's fine. Some people think Big Bang Theory is a great show. I'm not here to be a critic. So, when I was walking, Mamma Mia, the Mamma Mia 2 trailer was playing. I was walking in the theater with my girlfriend and I hear, Mamma Mia, here I go again. And Mamma Mia, the first one was awful. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, and I said this in the hallway walking down, and I go, no, I didn't miss you. Because, yeah, I was like, no, thank you. Get that shit out of here. So my theater was playing this on 2 screens, and I thought one was in 3D, and I didn't want to go see this movie 3D, so I called the theater, and I was asking, because they had a 4 and a 4:35 show, and I go, hey, which one's 3D? Because I want to know, and the guy's like, I don't think we have it in 3D. It's like he was like the teenage kid from The Simpsons who works at fast food theaters. Like, oh, we don't have it in 3D. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. He's like, both showings are 2D, and I'm like, fuck yeah, dude, thanks. It was very exciting. And I knew the movie was going to start a half hour after 4 because movie trailers go on forever now. So I didn't get to the movie until 4:18, and I thought, oh my god, is there not going to be any trailers playing? And I was pretty fucking close because we were at 4:18, and we only got one trailer for Wreck-It Ralph 2, which looks like shit. But luckily after that, the movie started at around 4:25, so I was very happy because that happened to both Solo and Deadpool 2, where I sat through like 25 minutes of trailers to start the movie, and I'm like, oh my god, this is killing me. The animal rights and capitalist thing did show because no amount of dubbing gonna change that, dog. But at least in the Spanish dub, the women's right thing didn't show. I was forced to watch Mamma Mia, the first one in the theater with my ex. One of the most painful theater experiences. And dude, I love ABBA. I love ABBA, man. ABBA's great, man. Come on. Like, big fan. Eurovision stuff, like, I'll defend. But man, that movie sucks. The way that movie's directed, the shit story. And God, I've watched that movie so many. I've seen the movie like 8 times. With my mother and sister, girls want to watch that movie. For some reason, if you have a vagina, sometimes in life your quality standards just get completely crushed. There's this thing I call the vagina movie. There's just some films, like A Walk to Remember with Mandy Moore. If you have a vagina, you love that movie. Grease, the first Grease, I don't know why. Women just, something. And don't say it's a chick flick. It's not always a chick flick that gets the vagina love, the vagina movies. I've seen non-chick flicks that have this too, where all women just like these. Steel Magnolias, which is a chick flick, but then stuff like Fried Green Tomatoes, good movie, but all women like it. I don't know why. It's just something about having a vag. It's just so, I mean, I guess there's some guy movies like Guys Like Field of Dreams or something, but some movies with chicks, man, and then you talk to them, you're like, man, you all like this fucking movie. Like, love it. They've all seen, they'll watch, it's like SVU, Law and Order SVU, the Sexual Victims Unit or whatever. They all like that show. That show's got like 500 episodes, and every woman's seen each one 100 times, and I don't know. It's like, why do you all like watching a show about rape? That's weird. You're all obsessed with a show about rape? That's a very specific thing to be obsessed with. And you like watching a cop beat up criminals with police brutality and all. That's like, okay. I mean, fuck, it's entertaining. I'm not gonna, but it's like, I mean, it's not like all dudes watch Oz. Like, I watched Oz, but it's not like every guy's like, hey man, do you remember that guy got raped on Oz? That was fun. You should do like me and go late to the movies. I've been trying that. Ray being awesome and everything, and all the good guys liking and respecting her, and the fact that she gets everything. Well, mainly also Laura Dern's character being the female leader, the purple hair, and her, and how she acts throughout the movie to Poe and putting him down this hero archetype in his place and all that. And Hodoi basically telling Poe to stop mansplaining. Yeah, she does kind of do that, doesn't she? Oh my goodness, what an adventure we've gone on that I haven't even talked about The Incredibles 2 for like the last 10 minutes. What a good critic I am. I was trying to add some levity to this. This was a little too analytical. I guess I'll give my arbitrary rating. I guess there's nothing left to say. I can't think of anything I left out unless you guys have some questions about the movie. I was struggling with this. Originally, I was thinking about giving the film an 8. Because overall, because of the third act, I think it's pretty much an 8. I think, if I could give this a 7.8, I would. But, like, I don't really rate that way. But I was thinking, like, enjoyment-wise, I probably an 8. But then I think about really trying to be as objective as I can. Is this, like, a great movie? And most critics gave it an 8. It's got an 80 on Metacritic. It's got a 7.9 in Rotten Tomatoes. Now, we could go ahead, like, 8.3, 84 on Metacritic. It looked like, oh, this is going to have great reviews. But, it's about what everyone's giving it. I'm struggling because I'm like, do I give this an 8 because it's solid and it's a good family film and it does work well enough. But the problem is it's just a little too generic for me to give it that little extra oomph. It's just a little too safe, and it never transcends. And my main issue with this is I don't really think it has a core message or meaning that really connect with me, subtext. And that's something that I need from a movie most of the time, is trying to find something that matters. And that even Isle of Dogs I was struggling with, it had that. It had a lot of subtext. So because of that, just because I didn't think this film had a lot of depth in that, at least, not necessarily what it was, but what it was about and what it was saying, I have to give this a 7.5. I would like to give it an 8. I'd like to give Brad Bird film an 8. I would give Mission Impossible 4 like an 8. And I don't think that really has any subtext. but it works better as a piece of popcorn entertainment than this film does. Once again, I'd give like the Iron Giant like a 10. I would give the first Incredibles like a 9, 9.5. I'd give the second one like I would give Ratatouille a 9, 8.5, 9, and I would give Mission Impossible. Tomorrowland's like a 6, 5.5. So, this is a better film than Tomorrowland, but it's not one of the great Brad Bird films. I hope he can bounce back with something else. So I'm going to give this a 7.5 as of right now. Maybe if I see it again, I'll feel differently. There was a short film before this I thought was very cute, but there's really no reason to go into that. One thing I was thinking about, and it's better than Finding Dory. Finding Dory just sucked, and this did not suck. This was a solid film. I probably liked it as much as I liked Coco. But I also want to say one thing that really concerns me about Pixar is that, and don't get me wrong, last year they did come out with Coco, and that was an original film, and it made a lot of money. It made $806 million. The short before the movie was very good, I would say. I thought it was very emotional where it ended up, but the shorts are always kind of good. I would say it was very good. I mean, if I had to give the short a rating, I'd give the short an 8 out of 10. The short was not totally working for me, but then the ending of it kind of got emotional, and I thought, man, that was emotional, because I started to rethink the whole thing. Because once you realize what's actually going on in the short, and it's not just this fantastical thing, you actually go back and rethink, and you're like, oh, that's what they're saying, and then you're like, oh, that's actually, it kind of makes you want to it kind of makes you feel bad for your mom in a way, actually. That's kind of what it does to you. Inside Out is better than this movie, in my opinion. I would give Inside Out like an 8.5. I think Inside Out's Inside Out, I think at its best has My Neighbor Totoro aspects to it, about letting go of childhood and accepting adulthood in a sense, but kind of also doing it with mental illness. I really liked Inside Out. As a sequel that directly connects to the last one, it is also to be compared to the first one. 7.5 seems generous to me personally. Well, it's just, just as a movie, I had a good time with it. I like superhero movies. I like Brad Bird's style as a director. I like his art style. I like that stuff. So it works for me because that's the kind of stuff I'm into. I like the Fantastic Four. I like seeing this stuff. So, it's my kind of movie. Aesthetically, I couldn't love this kind of stuff more. This is my kind of stuff. It kind of reminds me of stuff that I loved about Batman the Animated Series. So for me, it hit a lot of the things that really just, click my buttons. Is what Brad Bird does. So it's tough for me not to love. Even though he kind of breaks out of that in Ratatouille, and I still like that, but it's hard for me to not love a superhero film like this because, I think it's on par with your, a decent Marvel film, and I would give those about a 7 on average. I'd say it's on par with a good Marvel film. Not the very few that are a little bit better than that. So, but one thing that concerns me about them, I know Coke's original. I hate this lack of originality. I hate that they're cashing in on Finding Nemo because it made money, $1 billion. That they did do Monsters University, that they're doing this, and it's going to have $180 million opening weekend, and this is going to make $1 billion. What used to make them so great as a studio was they made original films, excluding the Toy Story sequels. Yes, the ratings are arbitrary, as I say. My review is always what I say in the review. The rating is ultimately meaningless. People should never focus on if I give a film a 9 or an 8 or a 7 or a 6 and all that. That does not matter. I spent a long time trying to explain what I felt about the movie, and the rating at the end is just some number I have to give it because it's a number for people to say, well, he thought this, but you can't define this stuff that simply. The thing though is that when I remember back when they were on their golden run, excluding Cars, but when it was like Finding Nemo and The Incredibles came out, and then WALL-E came out and Up came out, and Ratatouille came out, in between those films, and every film was a new story. Every film was a new story. Brad Bird made Ratatouille, it was new, and he made The Incredibles, that was new. Pete Docter made Up, it was new. Andrew Stanton made WALL-E and Finding. They were all new films. They all had original scripts. They all had original. They were set in different places. WALL-E had space stuff and a trash planet. Up was very Ghibli and had the first 6 minutes. It was about an old man and a little boy. They shared some dynamics as two characters who are at odds with each other that learn to come together over a story. And, all those films were original new films, every single one of them. And that was so exciting at the time. Every time one of their films came out, it was like, man, you knew it was going to be like a 3.5 out of 4-star movie. And it was a new story by a new director with a new vision. But then recently, a lot of their films, I mean, and once again, I like the ending of Matsu's, right? But it's just a college film with those characters. It's just, them trying to do Animal House. Or Revenge of the Nerds, if you will. And then, Finding Dory's just a remake of Finding Nemo. Now there's this film, which is this is the one I really wanted a sequel for, and it's just decent. It's okay. And Coco I thought was good, not great, but Inside Out's more of what I wanted. Pete Docter made that, he made Up. I really want more of that, Inside Outs, where that was an original film again, with new characters, new story, and it's very telling that was like their best reviewed film in the last years. That film's got like a 90 on Metacritic, I think a 93, and like 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. And it made like $850 million. That film was an original Pixar film, and that's when they're at their best, is when they let a director tell a new story in a new world, and not when they just kind of go back to the well. Toy Story 2 is the exception. I think Toy Story 2 is a great sequel, and in many ways has a better plot, and writing and action than the first film. And I really liked it, but I think Toy Story 2 is the best film of that trilogy. I think Toy Story 2 is a really good movie. I think it's John Lasseter's best movie. But that's the rare thing, and they kind of found their groove. So it was these other films. It's like, yeah, I just want more new. And I'm scared thinking that they're just going to keep making sequels now to the stuff that was popular. Like, are we going to get a third Finding Nemo movie? Are we going to get? I guess I want Incredibles 3, but at the same time, I maybe it would have been better if Brad Bird just would have done something new and made his third original animated film with this company and his fourth one overall. Maybe that would have been something better. I was disappointed Mr. Incredible wasn't rocking Captain America beard. That would have been awesome. Why not just do a recommend, not recommend system rather than arbitrary numbers? Because I find the arbitrary rating thing to be funny. I think that's a funny way to do the review at the end, is saying my arbitrary rating. Because recommending it to me feels even more loose, because it's like recommend, not recommend. And there was a discussion me and Blood Money had about when we were going to do a show called Real Discussions, which we're still talking about doing, but I've talked about it for 3 months, so I'm not going to promise anything. But we heard this quote Stanley Kubrick told a friend once about Pulp Fiction. He goes, it's rather good. It must be considered. So we talked about doing a rating system at the end, calling it It Must Be Considered, or what was the other thing? It was either if we thought the film was great, the film had to pass a great test. It could not just be good. We would say it must be considered, which means it must be considered like one of the great films. This filmmaker must be considered. We thought that was so funny. And then the thing that was the negative was like it must be forgotten, or it must be... I can't remember what the negative side was, but that was always we were going to be. He's like, should it be considered? And we're like, it must be considered. And we only agreed on one film being considered, was 3 Billboards, and maybe Good Time. But every other film we talked about should have not been considered. Like one of the great films where you really like, this is worth looking back on. We talk about, like, after Dunkirk came out, it's like Christopher Nolan must be considered again. So maybe I'll do something like that down the road. Some people don't connect with Toy Story. They find like there's a lot of artifice to it. I've heard from some people. I know I don't feel that way, but the part of Half in the Bag where they say recommend or not. No, it's more about the review than them recommending it and not at the end. That's really what it's about. I like numbers though. I like star ratings. I like that stuff. I like grades. I like giving a movie something. It must be aborted. It must. All right. I guess there's nothing left to say. I mean, if I just keep dragging this out and it's about one topic, I don't really have anything left to say. I mean, I really don't. I think I covered the whole movie. I think I broke it all down. Maybe I'll do a shorter review video on it eventually, but I've been liking doing these live stream reviews because I get to talk more in depth about the movie. When I do those videos that are like 10, 15 minutes, sometimes longer, I do like it because I get better word choices, like my Call Me By Your Name review or my Columbus review or I get to pick, like my Dunkirk review I'm really proud of. So I get to talk about the films a little bit more artfully, poetically. And I like doing that, and it's kind of hard to do that when I'm just going off the cuff. I can't just do that. I have to think about the stuff for a little while and process it. But sometimes it's fun, like the Last Jedi review. I thought Good Time was the best film last year. It was my favorite, for sure. All right, so that was The Incredibles 2. Thank you for watching. I'm glad you guys tuned in. I hope you had a fun time. I really appreciate you guys all watching this, and thank you to all the new subscribers. I've added over 100 subscribers just these last couple days, and that's awesome. And sorry about Saturday Night Fever, but my voice is kind of getting shot, and I had to do this tonight, and but I'll try to do one next Saturday. I really will. I wanted to do one for you guys though, I really did. But tune in, tune in for Box Office Addict tomorrow, where we will be talking about The Incredibles 2 incredible opening weekend. So thank you, and please rewind your VHS tapes before you bring them back to the store. Don't be an insensitive prick.